Shabbat Shalom to all of you out there in social media world. Yes, this is Brother Dana coming to you from Chicago on the Sabbath. Today is Saturday. I hope that you are enjoying this day off and celebrating your time with the Most High and worshiping Him and thanking Him for who He is and for what He is promised to do in the lives of those that devote and follow Him. So, Shabbat Shalom. I wanted to bring this story to you some time ago, and when I'm sharing some of these videos, I just really feel led to share a little bit of my journey and experiences that I've had in the first 23 years before you've gotten to know me these past 2 years on YouTube. And it's been that journey and those experiences that have brought me to where I am today, to be able to see what I see and to share what I share, to defend those that I have such an enormous love and respect for, which are my black brothers and sisters, for those that do not know yet that they are the true Hebrew Israelites. I used to walk on Morse Avenue all the time. I would walk from Morse Avenue to the church, which was probably about 1.5 miles, close to 2 miles. And as I would get off the train to walk to the church, where I would have a old fellowship hall, and I would open it up for basketball to the kids in the neighborhood to give them something positive to do and then to speak something positive into their lives, I would pray. And eventually when I moved up into that neighborhood, I realized that Morse Avenue was very heavy populated with gang members and those selling drugs. And so during the summer or the warm months here in Chicago, I would walk around this block several times. And as I would walk around, I would just pray and I would ask the Most High to protect and to open the eyes of His young men that were selling themselves short to who they really are. And the reason why they were doing that is because nobody had really told them who they are. And so as I continued to walk day after day, week after week, and even month after month, eventually some of the guys were like, "Who are you? We see you here all the time. What's up with you?" And then that opened up the door for me to say, "Well, I'll let you know, I've been walking and praying for you for an awful long time because I see your value and I know that you have a purpose and a reason for your life according to Jeremiah 29:11. And they became so respectful of myself that one of the young men, specifically Q-Tip, if they were going to do a transaction or anything that was not legal, they would have enough respect for me to say, "Hey, Rev, we need you to step over there because we have to carry out our business." And as soon as they carry out their business, they would have me come back because they did not want me to get involved in anything that would cause me harm if the transaction happened to go down in a negative way. And so one of those times when Q-Tip said, "Hey, man, I need you to step aside," I said, "All right." And then I came back. I said, "Hey, Q-Tip," I said, I can't wait, and I wish you would stop selling these drugs." And before I could say much more, he grabbed me by the shirt, and he pushed me up against the wall, and he says, "Rev, you want us to stop selling drugs? Well, then let me show you and tell you something." And he led me to his apartment where he was living with his mother. Q-Tip at the time was probably 21 years old. And as we walked into this apartment, dark and gringy and sad, a little toddler was kind of running around with a diaper. And sitting at the high chair was even a younger child. And over in the sofa was his mother that was knocked out. And I don't know if she was sleeping, but I do believe there was some substance that was helping her sleep. And Q-Tip came and he opened up his refrigerator and he said, "Rev, you all tell us to stop selling drugs." And he says, "I would stop selling and doing some of the things that I'm doing if you could help me with the resources to at least feed my brother and my sister because I'm tired of seeing them going hungry all the time." And again, I know we all have choices. But the choices for me as a white male to make positive choices for my future is so much easier and different than it is for a young black man that is not valued, not respected, and not wanted in this society. So I cannot judge a young black man for making bad choices when I myself as a white man have never been placed in that same situation, because if I was, who knows if I would be able to maintain who I am by making good choices. I don't know. So I can't judge somebody if I've never been in those shoes. And so from that point on, I learned that my job is not to tell these young men or women what they need to do or stop doing, but is to declare in their lives who they are. That they are created in the image of the Most High, and that they are kings and queens. And to pray for protection over their lives until that information, or until they call out on the Lord or Yah, and He begins to transform their lives with His love. And so one day as I was getting ready to walk home, and I'm going to go on stereotypes here, so please forgive me in this, a young black man, about my age at the time, I was probably around 26, 27 years old, began to follow me, and then he said, hey, how are you? He says, I see you walking around here, and again, he was dressed very preppy, very, very professionally. And so, of course, I started talking to him, and I was on my way home, and he was following me, and I would say about a parking lot distance before I reached the door of my apartment building, he then asked me, so what do you do? And I said, well, I'm like a youth pastor in this neighborhood, and I reach out to young men on the streets and invite them to the church to play basketball. And he began to weep, and he began to weep, and he began to weep, and then he said, I wish I would have met somebody like you years ago. Well, the story of this young man was that when he was around 4 years old, or 5, his mother, with his older sister, a couple years older, said, let's go to McDonald's. And as they left to go to McDonald's, they passed the police station, and she said that she needed to use the washroom. And so she had the kids sit there, and she never went to use the washroom, and she never came back to get Ronnie or his sister. And from that point on, for many years, he went in and out of foster homes and foster residential places. And then when he dropped out of school at 16 and 17, he said he started selling drugs, but he had found a woman that he had been with, and he loved her. And at that point, they had 5 young girls. He then broke down and said, just that past May, which this was in the fall, he said that his girlfriend left to go get some groceries, and he was in the house with his infant son, Ronnie Jr. And when she came back about 45 minutes later, she went into the room to check on him because he had been down for a nap. He was blue, and he had passed away from SIDS. And Ronnie, to that day, took responsibility that if he would have gone and checked his son, he may still be living. But I assured Ronnie over and over that it is natural for us as a parent to allow a kid to sleep for 15, 20, 30 minutes without going in there and checking on him. So you did nothing wrong. He had shared with me that he had been abusing drugs and that he had lots of problems. And so for about the next 2 years, I would meet with Ronnie. A couple times him and some of the guys from the streets, Q-Tip and them, would get in my car and kneel down so that when we would go through Latin King gang territory to the church, we would be safe. Almost 2 years after I met Ronnie, there was a couple women that were murdered and raped in the Rogers Park community where we lived and where I was serving the Most High. And I didn't think anything of it. Saw pictures. They said this image of this man was the gentleman that raped and murdered this last woman that was then linked to this other young lady. Both happened to be white. And he was using the ATM card from his last victim. And if anybody recognized him, to contact authorities. Well, he had this hoodie up and stuff, and I didn't look real deep. However, Ronnie's daughter went to school the next day and shared with her teacher that she had saw her father on the news. Well, of course, they inquired about that. So Ronnie went to pick up, now I want you to remember this guy's name, Mike. Did not know Michael Sanders at all at that time. Picked up Michael Sanders from work. They were lifetime friends. And from work, he then went with his girlfriend to pick up 3 of his children that were in school. And as they went to pick up the one young lady, they were greeted by a squad of police officers. And both Mike and Ronnie were arrested at that time. I found out later during trial for Ronnie that Ronnie's main purpose when he approached me that day was to rob me. He would follow various men or women home, talking to them, and then when we would open up the door, he would then shoot or beat us up, take the key, go into our apartment, and rob us. But see, when Yah is on your side, no weapon formed against you shall ever prosper. And what the devil means for harm, Yah turns it around and uses it for our good in his glory. So when I heard Ronnie's name on the news, I immediately, that next day, drove down to California. That is where our Cook County Jail is. There's 15 divisions there with how many thousand of men. And so I waited for 17 hours because I'd never been down there before. I found out where he was. And about 15 hours after sitting in the lobby, the superintendent was getting ready to leave her shift. And she saw me there and she said, "Young man," she says, "I have noticed you sitting here all day." And I said, "Yeah, I'm here to visit an inmate and I don't know what to do." And she said, "Well, you know what? I'm just going home, but let me help you. Favor of the Most High is better than silver and gold." So she took me back and she asked me who I was waiting for. And she said, "Today is visitation day for the young ladies." But she said, "You have been waiting here so faithfully." She says, "I'm going to make an exception for you. He's being detained right now or in front of the judge." I forgot the legal term for that. And he was going to actually be officially sentenced. And she said, "Once they're done, they'll come here. But I will make it okay for you to visit him." And so it was about 18 hours before he finally did come. And I sat in front of him. And when I did, he began to weep. And he said, I'm so sorry. But he said, "I need you to meet my friend, Mike. Mike has been arrested with me. And he's not guilty. He had nothing to do with this. And let him know that I'm going to let him out and get him out by confessing." So that next day, I went back down to Cook County Jail and I went to visit Mike. And I still remember I'm sitting there and he comes but from the other side and there's glass in between. And he looks at me and he's like, "Who the hell are you?" And I said, "Well, I know you don't know me. You know, my name is Dana." I said, I'm a youth pastor, a guy that's out on the street. And I met your friend Ronnie. And Ronnie told me to come and talk to you to tell you that he's going to make it right for you so that you can get out. "All right, thanks, man. Cool." And he walked away. Well, I decided that I wasn't going to stop visiting him. And so I have continued to visit Mike. And Mike, to this day, 19 years later, is one of my best friends. Unfortunately, Michael Sanders was found guilty based off of a signed statement. No physical evidence, no DNA. And so as I got to know Mike, he was the one that linked me up to be able to go into Cook County Jail, where I would go behind the bars with these guys and I would talk to them. I would empower them. I would give them, the word that would tell them who their image truly is, even though society says you are not. And I got a lawyer. I met some other people and we went to Kent Law School, and we got a lawyer with students to help represent Mike because he was an innocent man. But because of the corruptedness of even our judges and the judicial system, Mike was found guilty and was sentenced to life plus 65 years. Today, Mike is still locked up, serving life. I still talk to Mike almost every other week. He calls me collect. I and my mom and dad send him money so that he can have snacks, so he can have a pair of glasses, so he can have what he needs while he's locked up until the Most High sets him free. So with that story, this is one of the things that I learned that I still never get an answer for when it comes to those in our justice system. And I looked this up. The definition comes from Nolo's Plain English Law Dictionary. See, what you and I were taught, or so I was taught, is that you and I are innocent until we're proven guilty. And here it says one of the most sacred principles. Sacred for who? One of the most sacred principles in the American criminal justice system, holding that a defendant is innocent until proven guilty. That is a bunch of bull crap for certain group of people. And you know who I'm talking about. You, my black brothers and sisters. You are guilty and treated guilty until we're able to put whatever we need to put on you to make you guilty. And we're seeing that happening right now with the young man that was shot by this white female cop. And so I said, all right, let me even give you this much, that we need to take some of these guys based on a possible crime that they committed to keep them behind some type of bar. But if they're innocent, according to what you say is in a law in our criminal justice system, one of the most sacred principles in the American criminal justice system is holding that a defendant is innocent until proven guilty. In other words, the prosecution must prove beyond a reasonable doubt each essential element of the crime charged. If that's the case, then why do you treat them like crap? Why do they not get to go outside? Why now are they locked up in their jail cell 23 out of the 24 hours? Why do you degrade them? Why do you bring in guys that strip these gentlemen naked and put dogs up and around their areas of their body where they might have drugs? If these young men are innocent until they're proven guilty, then tell me, how do you justify that? Because to me, they're already guilty. I know stories of young men that were there that for 6 to 7 years, this one young man was being charged of rape. And every time the state went to go get DNA testing, they lost it. They couldn't find it. And this went on for 6 years until finally he pleaded guilty. And they said, time served. Yeah, he got out of jail. But the noose is around his neck because now on his record, he's a guilty rapist. I want to read this to you. This comes from the statutory section in the District of Columbia. And I want to read this to you. Whoever knowingly overdrives, overloads, drives when overloaded, overworks, tortures, torments, deprives of necessary substance, cruelty chains, cruelty beats, or and does not give proper food, drink, air, light, space, health care, shelter, protection from the weather, faces imprisonment up to 180 days or a fine. I just read you the law in how people in the District of Columbia are required to treat their dog. That's right. This is for the anti-cruelty and animal fighting provision in the care of a dog. And yet when I walk into Cook County Jail all those years, these guys were not even treated this well. And yet they're innocent until proven guilty. At this point, I want to read to you what took place in Mike's life, those 36 hours when he was arrested falsely until he was brought before the judge to then be arraigned and going into Cook County Jail. This here is Michael Sanders. This here is Michael Sanders. No prior charges, nothing that he had done wrong before he faced this sentence. And so I'm going to read to you what he wrote to me called 36 Hours by Michael Sanders. This is what he wrote, and I want you to hear it. 36 Hours is a graphic portrayal of the worst 36 hours of my life. It all started on March 11th of 1999 when I was illegally arrested for the murders of these two young ladies. Although the police did not have a warrant for my arrest, they handcuffed me and transported me and my co-defendant Ronnie to Area 3 police station for questioning. Once we arrived at the police station, I was placed in a dark, windowless, cold room called the camera room, although there was no camera, and none of my questioning was put on tape. I was handcuffed to a ring on the wall next to a steel bench. Detective Lewis was the first to question me about the murders. I told him I did not have any information pertaining to the murders. I had nothing to do with these murders, sir. Well, he left the room for a few hours, only to return with another detective, who I would describe as the officer from hell. This second encounter was infused with physical abuse, described as with physical abuse and profanity. Both these detectives questioned me about the murders. I know nothing about them, and I didn't do it, I told them. It became obvious that Detective Rossi wasn't pleased with my answer. He slapped me in a violent rage and punched me in my lip. Stop lying, N. Shortly thereafter, these detectives claimed they had DNA evidence and asked if I would be willing to take a DNA test. And I said, absolutely, because I know I was innocent. I signed a waiver form agreeing to the test. They swabbed my mouth and left me in this dark, windowless room with no lights for several hours. This whole process seemed like an eternity, as I couldn't see outside, not to mention I wasn't fed, given water, or even allowed to use the washroom. By this time, I was losing my mind. I had never experienced anything so barbaric. I laid on the cold steel bench crying myself to sleep. I was awakened by a barrage of loud voices. Both these detectives questioned me again. I told you I don't know anything. I didn't do this, I told them. Well, Detective Rossi was so enraged by my answer, he began to slap me multiple times in the face. Stop effing lying to me, you N. You know you did them. Your buddy Hinton told us everything. He went on to say, why would Hinton give you money if you were not at the murders? I was not there, and Hinton was lying. I didn't have anything to do with them. However, the detective left the room only to return with Ronnie. Detective Lewis asked Ronnie if I was present at the murders. Initially, he did not answer, so Detective Lewis punched him hard up against the door frame. Finally, Ronnie barely nodded his head, indicating that I was there. By this point, I was flabbergasted and in awe on Ronnie's response. I sat there in disbelief and silence. So now the two detectives left the room with Hinton. I was left alone in this dark, cold room, chained to the wall. Still, no food, no water, no washroom. Eventually, I drifted back to sleep, only to be awakened by loud, racist rants. They seated me in the middle of the room, surrounded by 12 to 15 white officers. And I definitely recall a red, curly-haired officer yelling straight into my face, I am a white hillbilly boy who hates N's. He reinforced his words by slapping me in the face and the head. We have prints that you're lying, you N. I was scared to death by this time. All of the officers were white. This whole scene produced a domineering atmosphere. Eventually, they left me again in this dark, windowless, cold room. Every time I heard dress shoes screeching against the floor, I would shriek with fear, as this was an indicator the detectives were once again coming my way. What would they do to me next? The door opened, but a new detective entered the room. He was a lieutenant. He asked me about the case. I didn't know anything about it, I told him. I was not there. He asked, do you have any kids? He says, yes, I have a 2-month-old daughter. Well, if you want to see her again, I would cooperate if I were you. If not, 60 plus years, you will stay. If you do not cooperate, if you do cooperate, you will get burglary and do a couple of years and then move on with your life. You'll be able to be with your daughter. As we were talking, Detective Lewis entered the room. He told me burglary was less serious than rape and murder. Next, Detective Rossi came in, slapping me twice in the face. Tell the effing truth, you N. Detective Lewis gave me a version of events of the 2 murders. Get it right, you N. Lewis repeated a narrative to me numerous times, correcting me when I missed something. Once he was satisfied with coercing me, he told ASA would later call a court reporter. It was typed up, and finally, they gave me Burger King, some water, and a chance to use the washroom 36 hours later. In conclusion, I was framed for 2 murders I have no knowledge of. The police broke my will through physical abuse, my manhood through manipulation, and my spirit through racial hate. At this time, 16 years later, every day I face life locked up as an innocent man. Yet I place in my heart hope that God will one day set me free. This has now been 19 years. As I said earlier, Mike has become my best friend. We talk on a regular basis. I drive down to Joliet to visit him, to buy him at least some halfway decent food from the vending machines. And we were just up for a retrial, trying to get a retrial. And he was denied. He was denied because the 3 judges, all of them had to agree, but one of them did not. And this was one of the original judges that did him wrong at the very beginning of his journey locked up in prison. And so I'm not only sharing this story that our justice system that states you are innocent until proven guilty is a bunch of baloney and hogwash, but I'm also sharing this story because I need your help. I need your help to do what we can do to set this innocent man free. I can't do this on my own. We have tried to raise possibly some money, but you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was the appellate court that we asked for a retrial, which was denied because one of those judges said no. One of those judges that already was corrupt in his case from the very beginning. And isn't it a coincidence that they put this judge back into a position to determine whether or not he gets a retrial? I went even on stand for about an hour and a half, and I shared what I knew and what I was told by the murderer himself. I lost track of Ronnie. I started to visit him for almost 7 years, and then he did not want me to visit anymore, and so I took his words. But I have been visiting Mike and talking to Mike. My mom and dad have adopted him. We send him, like I said, money every single month so that he has some on his books to buy anything that he would want to help him in these days until he's released. But again, I'm asking that if you know some lawyers or some people even in the Illinois area that can help us get his case heard, to those that will see through the lies. How does a man rape somebody and not leave 1 ounce of DNA? And even the pictures that I saw of where they said Mike had broken in and slid through a transit window above the back door was still 1 day, even less than of a day when the murder happened, was filled with dust and cobwebs and dead flies. I would think that if somebody slid in, that ledge would be wiped clean. There is so much to this statement that is false, that he left out the back door. However, later the picture showed that the back door was chain linked, locked. I know Jesus could probably, or Yeshua could walk through a door and chain it and walk back out. But I haven't known any human that has had the magical powers to be able to do that. So this innocent until proven guilty only applies to those that look like me. If you are a black brother or sister, as we're so much aware of it today and have since this country founded, you are guilty until we can put stuff on you to truly make you guilty. Thank you for listening. I know this is a longer video, but I really wanted to get Mike's story out there. This is my webpage, once again. If you can be of assistance, if you can help Mike and I out, please contact me at my webpage. Please give me a call. Please contact us. I want to see this man out. Not only because he's become my best friend, he's taking college courses, he's taking grad school courses. Every division and prison he's been in, when I go to visit him, the guards will say, "You're here to see Sanders? Man, that's a good guy." I said, "I know he is, because he's an innocent man." Unfortunately, Michael Sanders is not the only one that is locked up wrongfully or even overly charged. And it breaks my heart to think that one of the most sacred principles in the American criminal justice system says that holding that a defendant is innocent until proven guilty. And in other words, the prosecution must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they're guilty of the crime charged. So a signed statement with no other evidence is reasonable doubt and beyond. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your love and your support and your financial support that helps me continue to take these collect calls, that help me send him the money, as well as do all the other stuff the Most High has asked me to do. I've been doing this off of the provision of the Most High for 25 years. But I know he has given me an okay to say, "You have not, my son, because you ask not." And that is why I'm in a place of asking. Because I can't do everything alone. Again, I'm working a job to pay my bills. But to keep up and try to provide for the other things can be a struggle at times. A struggle at times where they're trying to foreclose on my home. But I know that the Most High gave me this home, and I know he's going to work it out. And without faith, it's impossible to please him. And I have told him over and over since the day I began to walk with him, "Father, I want to please you with my faith. I want to trust in you to do that which is impossible with man, but possible with you. And I want you to be able to look down on my life and say, 'Even now, well done, my good and faithful servant.' And I want you to be able to be pleased with the love that I have for your chosen. And I want to be used to defend those, because if the Most High has protected me all these years from that which the enemy has tried to plot and scheme against me, there's not a white person in this country in any position that can defeat or eliminate what the Most High has destined to happen. And that is why, again, that encouragement goes out to you, the true chosen Israelite Hebrews, that your season of oppression is coming to an end. Just like I believe that his season of being locked up will come to an end. And I don't know how the Most High is going to do it. But I said, Mike, he's going to do it in such a way that it will drop both of us to our knees and raise our hands and say to the King of Kings, to the great I am, hallelujah. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for your love and your support. I appreciate each and every single one of you. Until we meet again, Shabbat Shalom. Happy Sabbath. See you later.